Rabotay, let's go back to Daf Tzadi Daled Amid Beis in Masechet Yevamot, in which we began the Mishnah yesterday, but we didn't really begin the Gemara. So if you want to find the Gemara, you just have to simply count down about 10 lines from the top of the Amud on Tzadi Daled Amid Beis. The Gemara is going to be medayek from the Mishnah that in a case where he accidentally thought that, based on testimony, that his wife had died, he went and married her sister, and then she, his original wife, came back alive, and the Mishnah says he can resume his marriage relationship with his wife, his first wife, as if nothing had happened. So the Gemara is medayik the afal gavti ozel ishto v'giso limdinas hayam. So this is where we had a very complicated scenario, and we want to review it so that we can move forward today. So it's Ozil Ishto V'Giso Limedinas Hayam. It means that we have a man whose wife went to Medinas Hayam. That's called Ishto. And we have a married couple where so-and-so, again, we can give names in a minute, is married to his wife's sister. So you have two men married to two sisters. One man, his wife goes out to Medinas Hayam, and her sister, the husband of her sister, went out to Medinas Hayam. When we say went out to Medinas Hayam, what we mean is that there's going to be testimony that that person died, and yet, to our surprise, the person shows up on 2 feet, alive and well. So there's testimony about his wife, that she died, and there's testimony to his wife's sister's husband that he died. That's called Giso, his brother-in-law, because again, two men married two sisters. So let's see if we could give names here. Whenever we talk about sisters, we talk about Rachel and Leah. Avram married Rachel, and Yitzchak, who's not related to Avram, we're just using it as a name, he married Leah. So Avram is married to Rachel, and Rachel goes out to Medinas Hayam. Yitzchak is married to Leah, which makes Yitzchak Avram's brother-in-law, and Yitzchak goes out to Medinas Hayam. Now we have a single witness that testifies that Rachel, the wife of Avram, who went out to Medinas Hayam, died, and the witness testifies to Leah that her husband Yitzchak, who went out to Medinas Hayam, likewise died. Now, Leah could marry Avram, according to the testimony of this witness, because Leah is no longer Neshes Ish, her husband Yitzchak died. She's no longer Achos Ishto because Rachel died. You follow me? So that the witness is testifying that in effect, Avram could marry Leah. In other words, the two people who were left behind could marry each other. Why? Because his wife and her husband died, presumably. Again, we're going to find out that's not so. But right now, Beis Din is relying on the testimony of an aide, of one single witness. And therefore, Avram and Leah, who are left behind, are allowed to marry each other. Avram could marry Leah, even though she was married to Yitzchak, and even though she's the sister of Avram's wife, Rachel, because according to the testimony of the Eid Echad, Rachel is gone, and Yitzchak is gone. If Yitzchak is gone, then Leah is no longer an Ashes Ish. And if Rachel is gone, then Leah is no longer a Chos Ishto of Avram. So if Avram could marry Leah. Nasa Avram is Leah. This is a very unfortunate marriage, as we'll soon see. Avram went ahead and he married Leah, who's the former wife of Yitzchak, the Almon of Yitzchak, and the former sister of his wife, Rachel, but Rachel is gone. So I mentioned to John because I think he has the Gemara, it's Taf Kuf Dal. That's the number of the diagram. Okay. Now Rachel, the wife of Avram, comes back alive and well. Yitzchak, the husband of Leah, returns alive and well. Now, with the new information of Rachel showing up alive and Yitzchak showing up alive, the marriage between Avram and Leah involves two violations. Leah that he married is an Ashes Ish because Yitzchak is alive. Leah is a Chos Ishto because Rachel is alive. And now we get to a diuk in our Mishnah. The Mishnah seems to imply that even in this case, Leah cannot resume her marriage with Yitzchak. And that's called, in the next line of the Gemara, Mitzra Eshes Giso Agiso. The wife of his brother-in-law, meaning of Avram's brother-in-law, who is Leah, is Asura al Giso. She cannot marry his brother-in-law, Yitzchak. I don't mean marry, but resume the marriage relationship. Why is that? And that's based on a previous Mishnah that we learned here in this parak, that if Eid Echad testifies Meis Baileth, that your husband died and she went ahead and got married to someone else based on the testimony of one aide, and then her first husband comes back alive, she is not permitted to resume her marriage with her husband once she married someone else. Now let's ask a different question. Do we legitimize the marriage relationship between Avram and Rachel? And the answer is yes. Because Avram's marriage to Leah is a non-starter. Again, we thought it was a good marriage, but now we find out that Leah was an HSH. So certainly, Avram is not married to Leah. Again, Leah cannot resume her marriage relationship with Yitzchak because based on the Eid Echad, she went ahead and married, in this case, Avram. But be that as it may, the marriage between Avram and Leah is a non-starter. It's totally invalid. And the good news is that therefore Avram could resume his marriage with Rachel, pick it up where he left off, because his marriage to Rachel's sister Leah is a non-marriage. Now here's the tricky part of it. From one perspective, we are halachically recognizing the marriage between Avram and Leah. I'll prove it to you. Because Leah cannot resume her marriage relationship with her original husband, with Yitzchak, when Yitzchak shows up on 2 feet. And the reason for that is because she is considered as if she was married to Avram. Is law amrina, we're not going to say the following, right? This is brackets with a minus sign before it, but let's see what's inside the brackets. Law amrina, shemitoch sheho ilu nisue Avram b'Leah lafuke v'lesar osa al baila. We are going to some extent, recognize the marriage relationship of Avram and Leah, insofar as Leah cannot resume her relationship with Yitzchak. Is therefore Rehi Nechsheves Kiishto. We're going to consider Leah as being married to Avram. Again, on a Doraisa level, biblically, there's no relationship, there's no marriage relationship that could be valid between Avram and Leah. Leah's an HSH, let alone Achos Ishta. But we see that on a Darabanan level, we did in fact recognize that marriage. And therefore, Leah cannot resume her marriage with Yitzchak. And therefore, Rehi Nechsheves Ishto. Now, it's tricky because once we recognize the marriage on a Drabanan level between Reuven and Leah, Reuven can no longer resume his marriage relationship with Rachel because Rachel is the sister of his wife Leah. Again, everything is fluky because it's all counter the Doraisa. B'shuv tia Rachel achoso asur leAvram mishum achos ishto midrabanan. Is therefore medayekes haGemara lema mastisim delo Rabbi Akiva. Why? Again, we'll read this inside in a minute. Kevan shel Rabbi Akiva sarech Avram loses get leleah. Im came he nires ki ishto segirsha ubevadai shetzricha lesares Rachel achoso mishum achos kusha midrabban. So Rabbi Akiva is going to require that Avram actually divorce Leah and deliver a get to Leah. We'll see Rabbi Akiva in just a minute. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva is obviously considering Leah as a grusha of Avram. She needs that get from Avram. And the male of the status of Rachel is that of Achos Grushasa, which means that if a man divorces his wife Leah, he cannot marry her sister Rachel. So let's read the Gemara inside. Afal Gav.
Is it because do the Edom play any role in effectuating this that makes it equivalent to as if he divorced her?
Absolutely.
Because of the Edom, but what if there were no Edom and this took place without Edom?
Darn. If there were no Edom, then the marriage between Avram and Leah is meaningless. It would not register at all. It would have no halachic repercussions. The only reason why the Gemara insists that Avram should not be able to resume his relationship with Rachel is because the Rabbanan, based on one aid, recognize the marriage relationship between Avram and Leah. Let's go over that one more time. When the aid testifies that Yitzchak died and that Rachel died, therefore the Rabbanan, based on the fact that Reuven, I'm sorry, I keep calling him Reuven when I meet now we're giving him the name Avram. Yesterday we called it Reuven. But based on the fact that Avram married Leah, that marriage to Leah is only to be recognized in light of the testimony of one aide. When Beis Din accepted the testimony and relied on the credibility of one witness, to the effect that both Rachel and Yitzchak had died, that's the basis and the reason why the marriage relationship between Avram and Leah is to be recognized, only on a D'Rabbanan level. Hence, the Gemara thinks that we cannot allow Avram to resume his marriage relationship with his wife, Rachel, because she is Achos Grushaso, again, according to Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva goes a step further. He's saying that not only do we recognize the Eid Echad and it's the viability of the Eid Echad, as far as considering Leah to be married to Avram, hence prohibiting Leah from going back to her marriage relationship with Yitzchak, but Rabbi Akiva would go one step further. He's going to require that Avram actually deliver a get to Leah, all D'Rabbanan. Once going that step further, Rachel now becomes Achos Grushaso of Avram. And that's why the Gemara is going to say that this diuk, in the way we're reading our Mishnah, is against Rabbi Akiva. Let's see the diuk and why it's against Rabbi Akiva. The afal gav the ozil ishto v'giso lemdinas hayam, and the witness testified that they both died, both Ishto and Giso. Both of whom are alive and well, and now they show up. The Hani Nisuin, the Kamitzra Eshes Giso Agiso. That the marriage between Avram and Leah is enough to generate an Issa for Leah to go back to her husband and resume that relationship with Giso, meaning with Yitzchak. Because, and this is something that we had in the previous Mishnah back on Daf Ezayin, that if an Eid Echad testifies about a woman that her husband died, she married to some guy, went ahead based on the testimony of one aid and she married someone else. When her husband comes back alive and well, she cannot resume her marriage relationship with her husband. And that has to do with the sugi that we learned 2 months ago called Knas. Afilu hachi, nevertheless, we see that Ish's Giso Asira, that Leah is not allowed to resume our relationship with Yitzchak. Leah is called now Ish's Giso. But Ishto Sharia. But as far as Avram is concerned, Avram is allowed to resume his relationship with his wife, Rachel. V'lo amrinu, we're not going to say, well, mitoch shenesra eshes giso agiso, meaning the reason why Leah cannot resume her relationship with Yitzchak is because we recognize the marriage between Leah and Avram is therefore teyaser ishto Allah. Now, if we recognize the marriage relationship between Avram and Leah, Avram cannot marry Rachel. I mean, he can't resume his marriage relationship with Rachel. Is lema mastisa delo Rabbi Akiva. There's no way that in the light of this deal, you can reconcile our Mishnah with Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva, who requires that Leah receive a get from Avram, is Havyalah Achos Grushaso. Now the status of Rachel is she is the sister of his Grusha, Leah, because Rabbi Akiva requires that Avram deliver a get to Leah, meaning validating the marriage between Avram and Leah on a D'Rabbanan level. Hence, Avram is not going to be able to resume his marriage relation with Rachel because she's Achos Ishto. Midrabbanan. Sanya, we looked at the Brisa. Kol ha'rayos shebat Torah. If a man violates an Iser Erva and he's a shogeg, he didn't realize that she was an Erva, but he had this relationship with an Erva, thinking that she could be his wife. He didn't realize that she was an Erva. Einon tzrichas himen get. No get is necessary because there's no valid marriage. An erva relationship is not subject, doesn't lend itself to marriage. So she can now get married to anyone she wants to without a get. Chutz, the only exception is when one aide testifies that a married woman's husband who went to Pisav died, and now he comes back alive. Is Eishes Isha Nises Al Pi Bezdin. In such a case, if a husband comes back alive and she had no right to get married to anyone else, she'll need a get from that person from whom she received Kiddushin, she was married to. And here's a case of an erva, of an Eishes Ish, who requires a get from a relationship of erva. Akiva Mosif af Eishes Ach. And Rabbi Akiva says that we're going to add two categories, two arayos to the case of Eishes Ish. One is Eishes Ach. Again, we'll have to go through Eishes Ach in a minute, but we want to focus our attention on the second category that Rabbi Akiva adds to Eishes Ish, and that's Achos Isha. When a man heard that his wife died and he went and he married her sister, and sure enough, his wife is alive and well, Rabbi Akiva is going to require that the sister that he married illegally, based on the testimony of one aide who testified that his wife died, she requires a get. The Amar Rabbi Akiva, by a get, is Memela Israel law. If Leah is going to be required a get, even though the marriage relationship between Avram and Leah was not valid on a Deraisa level, but the Rabbanan require, according to Rabbi Akiva, a get, is Memela Avram could not be married to Rachel. He's going to have to divorce Rachel because she is Achos Grushaso, insofar as we recognize the marriage between Avram and Leah, according to Rabbi Akiva, requires that Leah get a get from Avram. Now, what's the case of Eishes Ach? A man married the wife of his brother. Why? Because he thought he was being Mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum. His brother, together with a son, went out to Bimbinas Hayam, and the aide testified that the son died first, and his father, meaning the brother of this Yavam, died second. So the Yavam was miyabim a woman because he assumed, based on the testimony of one aide, that his brother never died without any children. As it turns out, his brother's alive and well, despite the testimony to the contrary of the aide. There was no mitzvah of evil. Hence, he had a relationship with Eishes Ach. That marriage should not be validated. Rabbi Akiva says, no, she's going to require a get from her husband, even though it's not her husband, meaning there's no legal validity to that marriage. Now, the Gemara is saying that since Achos Ishto is on this list of exceptional cases where even though the marriage was an Ereva marriage, a get is required midrabbanan, if Achos Ishto is on the list, then that's against our Mishnah, which allows Avram to resume his marriage with Rachel. So at this point, the Gemara is going to interpret the Mishnah in a way that it can be reconciled with Rabbi Akiva. How so? The lav itmar Allah. Don't we have a brisa that interprets this Mishnah? Actually, I shouldn't say it's a brisa because it's Rab Gidol Amarav. Essentially, I mean, we're talking about Amoraim, so it can't be a brisa. Anyway, V'lavit Marlo Amarav Gidol Amarav Chia Bar Yosef Amarav. Hi, Eishes Ach. The case of the Eishes Ach that Rabbi Akiva required to get. Hey, Chidami, what's the scenario? Kigon Shekidesh Achiv Es Ha'isha. V'halach Limdinas Hayam. Shama Shemeis Achiv. Meaning he heard a rumor to the effect of the fact that his brother died without children. The Amad V'nosas Ishta, and he's miyabim his brother's wife. And now it turns out his brother's alive, and the marriage, so-called Yibum, was betos, and Rabbi Akiva required a get. Did. It means if not, meaning if you would allow her to leave that marriage relationship without a get, Amri Inshi, people will say, Hach Kama, no Havile B'Kiddushin. Maybe, in fact, she was never married to the brother that we presumably thought was dead and turns out to be alive, because that marriage was b'tanai, and the tanai was not fulfilled. V'hai shaper nasiv, and if the marriage to this brother that we thought was dead is not a valid marriage, then the marriage to this brother is valid. If she gets out of that marriage without a get, people are going to say, oh, she's an Ashish that left the marriage without a get. So since the din of Ashes Ach is interpreted this way, then let's interpret the Achos Isha case in the same light. Nami, where the Akiva requires a get in the case of Achos Isha. Hechi Dami could go to Kiddush Isha, Ve'holcha L'Medina Sayam. He married Rachel, and then she went out to Medina Sayam. Shama Shemesa. He heard that his wife Rachel died. He married Leah. Now Rachel comes alive and well on 2 feet. And we can now determine that his marriage to her sister was not valid. Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, requires a get. Because if we don't require a get, then the Amri Inchi, the people will start spreading rumors, and they'll say that the Nesuin to the Shnia was betos beast, like we said before in HSA. So the marriage between Avram and Rachel was never a valid marriage. It was some mistake. A tos, it was what we call Kedushay tos. Or she was an Erva for some other reason that he didn't know that. Whatever it is. Is Hachamaisa, Tnai Havile B'Kidushel. That the original marriage between Avram and Rachel was like a mistaken marriage. It was a Tanai, and that condition was never fulfilled. And therefore, the marriage relationship between Avram and Leah is a valid marriage relationship. And therefore, the Akiva requires a get. Okay, fine. How does this answer our problem? So now the Gemara is going to say that there's a difference between Rabbi Akiva's scenario and our Mishnah scenario. Ella, Nisuin, Mi ikala meimar tnoi havile b'nesuin. What I think the Gemara is saying here is that when a man marries a woman, and then subsequently she goes out to Medina Sayyam, and he hears a rumor that she died, and he marries another woman. In this case, he marries her sister. Is mi kol meimar tna havile b'nesuin? Are we really going to believe that people are going to suspect that the first marriage to Rachel, was a mistaken marriage? or a Tanai, and there was no Kiyum Tanai. A person doesn't live with a woman with a Tanai in his marriage, because if the Tanai will not be fulfilled, he's living in sin. Every bia is a bias nus. So the Mishnah is talking about a case of a man who married Avram, who married Rachel with a full-fledged marriage. No one's going to suspect that there was a Tanai. And in such a case, if he went ahead and he married Leah, there's no need to require a get from Leah, even according to Rabbi Akiva. So what's the case of Rabbi Akiva then? So what's the case of Rabbi Akiva? That's the only piece of the puzzle I'm missing. Hello. Nisuin Nikola Meimar. Tnoah Havile ben Nisuin. So what was the case of Rabbi Akiva where he required a get? Case of Rabbi Akiva. When there was no Nisuin? I'm going to take a shot at this. I hope I'm right, but I didn't find it explicitly yet. So I'm going to have to think about this from today till tomorrow. But I think what's happening is that Rabbi Akiva is talking about a case of Erison without Nisuin. And then we're afraid that people will say that the Erison was al Tanai, and there was never Kiyum Tanai. And therefore, they're going to think that the relationship between Avram and Leah is valid. Masha Enkin, our Mishnah is talking about a case not of Erison, but of Nisuin. And the marriage between Avram and Rachel was a full-fledged marriage that was consummated, because that's what Nisuin means. And you don't make a Tanai in Nisuin, because then you'll be living in sin and it'll be a Bilas Nus if there was no Kiyum Tanai. So I hope that that's real pshat. I just need to convince myself that that's what's going on here, because for some reason in my text it doesn't say that. I mean, I read it twice. if you have to go. I just need 2 minutes to see if somebody says what I said. I'm going to look in the back here of the Masechet. They have something called Yalkut Biurim. Let me just see if by chance Sadi Dalid Amud Beis, correct? Where are we? We are on the bottom of Sadi Dalid Amud Beis. Yeah.
I see here in the art scroll.
Oh, good. I don't have an art scroll.
Yeah, so I think it says more or less what you said. The Gemara, to sum up the exchange, the Gemara first assumed that Rabbi Akiva's ruling applied even where the brother and his wife and this man and his wife had consummated their marriages with Nisuin. The Gemara now realizes that his ruling was limited to cases in which they were married with Kedushin only.
Oh, excellent. Oh, thank you so much.
That's what
exactly what I said. If for some reason I can't find it in the Masechet, and it gave me a sense of insecurity. But if it's there, it's there. I'm looking in the back of the Yalkut Biurim. Yeah. V'lo arusa. Oh, v'lo arusa. So in the back, he adds v'lo arusa, which I think he has in mind what we said. Let me just see. The Gemara's language is no havi been asuim. Oh, vafilu man di Omer Makadesh al Tnaibol and Itzrichem and a get. We come a couple of shlicha milsa she's batlu and asuim machasatna. Oh, you see, Tosis Dibra Maska V'lav Itmar. V'lav Itmar Allah. In V'lav Itmar Allah. Just want to make sure that that's relevant to our point in the Gemara. V'lav Itmar Allah. I Ashes you don't. Oh, tell you, I have to kick myself a little bit because we have to go back to the Gemara V'lav Itmar Allah, and the Gemara says, Omer Rav Gidol, Omer Rav Chia Bar Yosef, Omer Rav Hai Ashes Ach. See, this is what I missed. I missed this. Echi Domi Kigon Shekidesh Achri V'Sa Isha V'Holach LeMedina Sayam, etc. Right, and then Amri Inchi Hachkama Tanoa Havile B'Kiddusha. I missed that, and therefore Hayachos Isha Nami Hechi Domi Shekidesh. Let's underline the word Shekidesh is the Isha. V'Holach LeMedina Sayam. it means that the relationship between Avram and Rachel was only Kiddushin. And Amri Inshi Akamaisa Tnai Havilei Big Kiddushin. I don't know how I missed this. Hello. But in the case of Nisuin, that's going to be our Mishnah. It's mamish explicit here. I mean, I'm so happy that you showed it to me, but now that I read the Gemara again, I don't know how I missed it. Because initially the Gemara didn't tell us that there was a distinction between Kiddushin and Nisuin. All right, so let me just make a note myself of where we got up to here on Daf Tzadi Dalid Amid Beis. And we're up to Omerle Rav Ashi Lirav Kahana.
Okay, take care.
All right, all the best. Thanks.